Hello, I'm Daniela. In today's slow stitching video, we're going to slow stitch a Monarch caterpillar. And where some of my videos show a little bit of abstract stitching, today's video is focusing on realism. By the time we're done, we'll have a beautifully three-dimensionally stitched caterpillar that looks almost like the real thing. I can't wait to show you my process. I use just a few supplies, I show alternatives, and I tell you about different methods you can use to create this piece. It looks complicated, but it is really simple. So let's get started. So here's the little piece here. This is just a variation on making the caterpillar. And what I did was I added some green leaves here. And as you can see, I folded them so they're very dimensional. Then I added a little bit of stitching. I stamped with just rubber stamps Monarch as the caterpillar. I added in some buttons and picked up the color from the caterpillar. But if you look closely at the caterpillar, it's dimensional. And I'll show you how I make that. It's really adorable. Now you don't have to do it in the same way. The demonstration that I show you is going to be a caterpillar on a leaf, but instead of making a leaf out of a leaf shape of green fabric and then tacking it down with just some stitches, and I again kept those little folds there for dimension, but you don't have to do that. I just wanted something to offset the dimensions of the caterpillar. I found these at the dollar store. They're little felt coasters. They're sold as coasters. They're beautiful leaves. So if I open them up and remove here this little ribbon that holds it all together, I can even use that bow in my work. It has 4 coasters. They're very thick, stiff craft felt, but they have a beautiful shape. And I could even cut it down further if I wanted to fit my piece. But this is what I'm going to use today. So to make my piece, I'll show you the supplies I'm going to use. Now to make the base of the caterpillar, I just have some little cotton rope here. Doesn't matter, you can use the plastic rope if you have it. Or you don't even need rope, you can just roll up your fabric. I like to use the rope, it gives a little dimension, and it's a little more forgiving. If I stitch over it, the rope fights me. Whereas if I stitch over rolled fabric, well, the fabric will give. And so I just like that effect. But again, it's not necessary. If I didn't have the rope, I wouldn't go out and make a special trip to get it. But if I had it, I'd use it. I'm using some yellow printed fabric for the base of the caterpillar because this particular one, the Monarch, is yellow with black and white stripes, or basically it's black, white, and yellow stripes. I see it as a yellow background, but that might not necessarily be it. I can use either side of the fabric. I just have some black and white embroidery floss. This is all 6 strands still on the skein. And then I like to use glue stick to get it down onto my rope. But again, that's not necessary either. Originally, I thought I could do it with a straw, but the straw doesn't give, particularly the plastic straws, and the paper straws tend to fold. So that's why I use rope. And again, you don't need to use anything if you don't want to. So to start with, I have my backing, which is just a white piece of quilted fabric. Any type of backing will do, but I chose a size that I can put my leaf on, and it looks really nice already. Again, very simple. And now I want to choose the length of my caterpillar. So I kind of like it to about here. Snip this off, save that for another caterpillar. And this is how I'm going to have it. Can even trim it a little shorter. Maybe I'll use that other side, that other piece. Yeah, that's a little bit better. So now I'm going to wrap my rope with my fabric. So I don't need very much fabric. I'll cut it to about here. And then I like it to overhang because I fold the ends over, but I don't need it to overhang so much. If it's too short, it's very difficult to make that overhang. I'll cut it to there. And then I'll just practice rolling it. And this is a lot of fabric. So I probably only need about that much fabric. So I'll trim maybe 1/2 inch or so right off the end. Now I won't be stitching through the rope, and that's why it doesn't matter if it's plastic or not. I like to just take a little bit of this glue. It's just a temporary hold, and it helps me to grip the rope on the fabric. So I can just set it down straight on and just start to roll the fabric. like this and just keep rolling. And there I have my caterpillar. And now I like to have it with a little bit of a bend. So I just practice that bend. And while the glue is still sticky and wet, if I start that bend, it's helpful. So now I have the shape. And again, I can take my piece here and just verify that that shape goes. And I kind of like that. I'll have it coming off the plant, but I want to make sure the seam is on the bottom. So I'll just rotate it as much as I need to. And then I like to take a little more glue and I go over the edge here. I'll push it down flat with my fingers. Put a little bit of glue, but not too much, on the end. Bend it on itself and then flip it back. I'll just hold it in place. And I'll do the same thing on the other side. Fold it flat, add a little bit of glue, and I can fold it back. It doesn't have to be completely perfect because it's going to be covered with the wrapping of the embroidery floss. You can make sure they're both on the same side. That's probably a better plan. So I'll just add a little more glue on that side. See how forgiving it is? So now I'm going to take a pin and just hold my leaf in place where I want it. I'll try and find a larger pin here. I only really need to hold it in place very gently. Then I have my caterpillar, and I just want to see how I want this to go. Just like that. I do like to have a little bit of a bend to it, so I just play with it until I get that bend. And then I'll take my pins and stick it through. It's just a temporary hold until I can start tacking it down. And I'm not going to worry about the ends here sticking out. Not yet. When I work my way up to them with the wrapping, that's when I'll start to really be concerned about how those ends look. I'm going to start wrapping at the bottom here. So this is the area that I want to really play with first and make sure it looks exactly how I want it. I'm also going to try and make it so my pin does not stick out straight out from the bottom of the piece, because that's how I'm going to start wrapping. So I can play with this and move it around as I go. My only concern is about the first few inches here. I have a nice little bend to the caterpillar. I'm going to start with my black embroidery floss, and I have a length of it knotted on my needle. I'm going to come up and just do this couching stitch. So I come up on one side of the caterpillar, and if you see, the caterpillar is not tacked down, and I'm just going to go over it here. And I'm going about 1/4 of an inch or so up that caterpillar. And I just stitch it to tack it down. Now, if you look at the Monarch, it has very thick rings and some thinner rings. So to start tacking it down, I'm going to stick with 2 rings very close together. Pull out any little frayed fabric edges. So now I have my first ring down with the black. I'm going to skip a little bit of space. I'm not measuring it or anything. I'm just eyeballing it. And I'm going to stick another ring down. Again, the same couching stitch. And I'll come around here, attaching the caterpillar to my fabric. Again, not stitching through that rope, but maintaining that shape. I'll do one more stitch up ahead, and at any point that you want, you can double the stitches. So I think I'll double it right here. And because I am using this felt, just as if I was using fabric, I could stitch right through that felt. You can even go 3 stitches if you want. I'm going to just move up here and stitch one side, and then come on the other side. And now that I have it nicely anchored, I can remove my pins. I'm going to move this pin a little bit, and the top one, just because I want to make sure I get that bend on the caterpillar. I can put the pin back, but at this point I'm just going to remove it and just hold it there with my finger. still using that black thread to tack it down. And again, the choice of using 2 stitches or 1, or how close together, that's up to you. I like to stitch them fairly well spaced apart because I can always come back in on my way back down the caterpillar and fill in spots. Now I want to continue that bend, and I'm going to make a little bit of an S shape. So I'm pushing that caterpillar this way to stitch down up here. And I'm liking how that's looking. I'm going to stitch another stitch right there. And now I'm going to start twisting my caterpillar back. Again, tucking the ends, moving it around so it's easier for me to work with, and catching it with a couching stitch. I don't want my stitch to be so far from the caterpillar that it looks like the stitch is holding it in place. I want it to look like it's a ring on the caterpillar. And I'll just continue this all the way up the caterpillar. Now when I get to the part where my fabric is sticking out from underneath it, I'll play with it to get it to be hidden. And I'll make a point to come back in with additional thread, either black or white. And I can always bring in yellow too if I want, to hold it in place. And I'm going to actually tilt it just a little bit more because I really like the way the curved shape looks. So I'll hold it in place and finish stitching with the black thread. With my first amount of thread on my needle. Can always come back in, thread the needle again, and add more stitches. And I'm going to have to do that because I want to make eyes on the caterpillar, and maybe even antenna. I'm not really sure. So I'll just continue stitching until I use up all of this thread, working my way back down the caterpillar. I'll rethread my needle, and we'll see where we're at so that I can start stitching the eyes or doubling up some of this thread. So now I've stitched with the black all these rings around the caterpillar, and it's really starting to come alive already. And that's because the fabric is yellow and white, reminiscent of the actual caterpillar's coloring. I've stitched all the way up top to here, and now I just want to stitch 2 French knots to be the eyes. Depending on the thickness of the caterpillar will determine the thickness of the eyes. I'm going to stitch and wrap my thread 3 times. And then I'm going to stitch right back down as close to that caterpillar as I can get. And I'll do another one right next to it. Got to be careful how I go in because of the hole in the leaf that's behind it. And again, stitching right back down close to that caterpillar. And I've got 2 little eyes there. I can make little antenna. But if I did that, I think I'd want to use just 1 strand of floss just to come out. It's also okay to leave the antenna just like that. I'll knot my thread on the back, and I'll start the same process with the white thread, doing the couching stitch all around our caterpillar. So again, I've knotted my thread, and now I'm just going around that caterpillar. Every so often, I don't want it to look like a set pattern, like black, white, black, white. I want it to just kind of flow so it looks like something of nature. It still looks like there are black and white rings, but you wouldn't necessarily say the pattern was black, black, white, white, or anything of that nature. And now I'll just continue stitching up and down that caterpillar until I have that shape exactly as I want it. And just like I did with the black, I'll stitch either twice or just a single time with the white. I want some areas to be thicker rings and some to be thinner. And that gives a nice variation. And still, the fabric backing of that yellow and white fabric still shines through. So there, I have my completed caterpillar. I think it looks fantastic. Now let me tell you, it's a very substantial piece. Between the thick felt that was used for the leaf, the rope that's wrapped around with the fabric, and then the couching stitches, it's really substantial. I love that. To finish this piece off, I would tack down the edge of this leaf with some matching green thread. But I'm really, really pleased with how this looks. You can vary this. Instead of using the yellow and white backing, you can use solid yellow, you can use black backing, and then do your stripes with yellow and white, or you can use white backing and do your stripes with black and yellow. So there's lots of variations that you can do with this technique. Now I love this. I love how it's realistic looking, I love how it's eerie and a little bit fun, and it was definitely enjoyable to make. So that's how I slow stitch my Monarch caterpillar. I love the way it looks so realistic. It's textured, it's heavyweight, and it's fun. And I really enjoyed incorporating different types of leaves, either on my sample with the folded fabric that was kind of ruffled a little bit to look like leaves blowing in the wind, or the little coaster that I repurposed and used as a felt leaf. I found this project to be really enjoyable, and I'm really enjoying studying the realism aspects of textile art. If you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up and be sure to subscribe. And please consider becoming a paid member of my channel. Thanks for joining me today.